Good morning, everyone. Sorry for my delay.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. Um, I will call our special meeting to order at 11:34 a.m. and will give us a brief introduction. So we are here today to discuss the document that was submitted to the executive leadership of HSAC by the Pre-Housing Task Force. Um, in looking at that document, it was initially brought to the executive committee to review. We had a lively discussion in our meeting on last Friday. And the decisions from that document were to lift up the following sections of need um, from that document of, let's see, things that we had. The group has done great work, but these are also things that I think we've conversed about within the walls of HSAC and in our policy and planning meeting discussions. I thought I had this document open. Um, okay. Um, from that document, the things that the executive committee decided they wanted the policy and planning committee to focus on or lift up were the strategic plan recommendation, additional diversion funds at $25,000 a month for diversion resources to entry point, flexible housing subsidies, and or the flexible housing subsidies and medical respite. Um, because that strategic plan, we've talked about that for a long time. One of the determining factors for why we did not push forward the pilot strategies that were suggested, the pallets, safe parking, and the day center were because we felt like they would those interventions, if determined from a strategic plan, would be better. It would be better for the strategic plan to come first, and then the interventions on what we would do medium term and long term would be better reflected if we did the strategic plan portion for our continuum first. The other concern was that the definition of exigent, and in looking at that, we were also looking at what things could we stand up fairly quickly, not taking a lot of time that would meet some of our immediate needs. Two of those big issues or big ticket items would be to prevent more people from coming into the system and to I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm under a lot of pressure, y'all. Um, to prevent people from coming into the system and also to support people moving out so that we can pull more people who are outside of the system where we cannot touch or serve them in. Um, so keeping that as our focus, those were the recommendations that the executive leadership asked policy and planning to further develop into a needs request. And then lastly, our in light of the work that we've done around our fiscal year 26 budget requests, we did a lot of intentional work around making sure that an RFP request would be fair and competitive to any persons wanting to apply to be new providers in our continuum. And so if we were to move forward on those piloted projects, they would be in direct conflict with the spirit of our fiscal year 26 work. So that's I just kind of wanted to lay out the thoughts from executive, and if any executive members are here and want to add to any of that, or if I misspoke, you are free to jump in at this time.
You covered it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ebony has a family obligation. She's gonna try to get on at some point, but she may not, depending on how that family obligation goes.
There's a comment in the chat, and Drew Wooten has his hand up.
Okay. From reading the summary, that it seems the request from the city council was largely responsible to focus on new individuals to new partners. Request does not seem to address high need individuals and the overvote also to do it, which is this population with pallet program. I see your message, and I am holding space for that, for us to talk about that. Drew.
So just to clarify, Sharita, and I apologize if you already said this, I just want to be very clear. There was the memo that was sent on Friday. In what
memo? What memo are you referring to?
From the city, school, county task force, and what projects are being proposed? Like, what ones are we discussing today? And I guess I'm just curious because I wasn't at the meeting on Friday. So
okay, so the meeting on Friday was for executive committee. What our chair wanted us to do, our HSAC chair did not feel comfortable signing the document. She wanted it to be vetted, much like we vetted the fiscal year 26 process. So she wanted to hold a create meeting space. So we used our executive meeting for that space in order to discuss the document. And so we reviewed that document, and our recommendations for that document were in support of the exigent need request aspects of the document, and not the pallet village or day center. That was the gist of that discussion. And what the chair also recommended was that those things that we thought were priority and important be further discussed and developed in policy and planning. And so our policy and planning agenda was out prior to our executive leadership meeting. It was not initially added. It was not a space held for us to have a discussion from on the policy and planning agenda, because we didn't know what was going to happen in the executive committee meeting prior to Friday. And so what we had prepared to talk about was an exigent need request, because that had already, that was something that I had as chair on my list, because we've had this discussion before in policy and planning and in HSAC that we needed to address some things immediately. So the exigent need request was an item on our agenda. During the exigent need discussion, the document was brought up at that time when I was planning to have that discussion in March, because it was just the turnaround was too late. And so, and I think Eliza referenced that their submission was already beyond late. Is that correct, Miss Colleen? Like, if we didn't accept that document on Friday, the timeline had already passed? Miss Herbert?
I guess my question, Sharita, was, I guess at policy and planning on Monday, my understanding was that everything except day center services had moved forward from Friday, which
We,
I guess,
so much like the safe parking, and Drew, you are familiar with the safe parking proposal that we had gotten previously. The whether that meets an exigent need is the question that we had. How quickly can we stand up a pallet village? We don't have an identified location. How quickly will we be able to stand that up and meet an exigent need?
Just keep in mind, any new things that may be exigent will need policies, procedures, all of that needs to be built into place in terms of referral process, be built into the coordinated entry system. I'll see if I can get Jeff to join us if folks want to talk about that. Also, standing up new things, as you stated, Sharita, the procurement process for new exigent responses, it does take a minute.
So our reasoning was that we did not feel like it would meet an exigent need. It would not be able to be stood up quickly. And therefore was not something we were looking to move forward because of that factor.
From my understanding from the last meeting, Sharita, if I may, was the exigent need on the pallet homes. The exigent need was for city or county staff to identify a possible site for that. Was kind of the big push, because obviously even if we had the materials to stand it up, there's still a location issue that has to be figured out in terms of zoning and the other pieces.
Right, and
the
we
exigent piece was to push to find a place for tents, pallet homes, safe parking, etc.
so that was the suggestion that I made to the discussion on last week. While I did recognize, and I do recognize, that the safe space was discussed in the pallet proposal, the lack of having it already presents a problem. And so one of the things that I contributed to the discussion on Friday, and I also said on Monday, was that I was surprised to not see that be one of the first requests, because we're also in the midst of a tent distribution policy, and people don't have anywhere to put their tents. So I would have expected that to be something that came before we talked about other ways we could use a space. But I also felt like having an identified location would open us up to pilot a lot of different things in our continuum. So I'm gonna recognize Sheldon, but I do want to hear from the committee members who had the opportunity to review the document as well, because that was also the other reason we wanted to have this meeting, was so that they could share any or express any concerns that they may have or supports. So Sheldon.
Thanks. So I guess my question would be, I mean, were there some things that were brought forth that were deemed to be responses to this exigent need that could be stood up in a quick fashion? Because it
Are
sounds,
you meaning as far as like a bed?
well, I'm just thinking that, so if the things that were brought forth were deemed not to be sufficient to respond to exigent needs, then what do people have in their minds, or what's brought forth that's deemed to be something that would be responsive to exigent needs? Because it sounds like there's maybe never going to be something that's going to be a response.
So the things that we thought would be the things that would be exigent and easy to stand up would be additional diversion funds to keep more people from coming into the system. Number
Okay.
one.
Okay.
And then number two, the other, oh gosh, I keep losing my train of thought.
The flexible
other,
subsidies.
Yeah, the subsidies would help us move people out so that we can take more people in. Like, we need to stop the bleeding and then get our system to move a little bit so that we can have some turnover of beds and move people in and out, like to open up the flow. Because right now we're bottlenecked and we really can't afford for anybody else to enter our system right now. We can't. And we're sitting at 40 plus families, and like our families are really not moving. So those would be like the big things that we feel like we could stand up quickly.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Does anybody from policy and planning want to share?
I guess I have a question. I am on policy and planning, and also I'm not, appointed to the task force, but I observe to be in the loop on that subcommittee that submitted this report. I think one question I have about what we think can be stood up. I guess I'm wondering about the designation between these, like the two pilot programs with the ones with safe sleeping and safe parking, the pallet shelters, sanctioned encampments, as well as the day shelter proposal. I'm hearing both that they can't be stood up quickly, and correct me if I'm wrong, as well as a concern over wanting a strategic plan before those are piloted. But then also just wanting a location. And I think wanting a location identified first, I guess specifically for the safe sleeping sanctioned encampment, because the day shelter proposals have identified some locations. And I'm wondering, like, what are the main, out of those three options or three reasons, the maybe not being able to be stood up quick enough, wanting a strategic plan, and location, what is the ideal timeline of those things? Because I think a strategic plan feels, in my mind, like something that would be difficult to have in place before the next fiscal year. And would just love to hear discussion about in what order those things would ideally come in a realistic world in our COC.
If I may add one piece, pallet homes, from what we understand at this point, is they can only be up and used for 6 months at a time. So pallet homes can work for 6 months, then if we're going to rotate them around, tear them down, take them down for a day, put them up for a day, and try and figure out a gray zone to work around it. But the group who does this in Greenville has been clear that the rules are 6 months, and it's a code issue, a building code. These are temporary structures, not permanent structures. So that also goes into the fact that you've got to plan out who goes to them, and then what happens at 6 months when they have to come down by code ordinance.
Okay.
So those are things that we just have to think through.
And then you would also want to identify, like, what's the transition plan for that person? Is this person going to return to homelessness until something else, or is there going to be intensive supportive services and a plan to get them to housing? So I think it's just like it's some logistics and there's some policies and things that we need to build out for that. I don't think that we're saying that we don't need them, and I definitely think we need, and we've spoken for years about needing alternative types of shelter. But it's the policies alone is going to be, I mean, we may be able to get some guidance from other people to help us do it quickly, but we still have to go through a vetting process even for the policies. And we got to find a location.
So, but it does sound like the strategic plan part is a later, that's not one of the pressing concerns about I'm just trying to clarify for
So the
when I
strategic
plan.
plan has been something that has
Yeah.
been pressed that we
Yeah.
need to go ahead and do because we're out of compliance with our governance requirements on that. So we're past due. So it's something that we actually really need to push forward very quickly. Depending on how thorough you wanted the strategic plan to be, they can be very time consuming. So I absolutely agree with that. But there has been a lot of pressure for us to address that.
Okay.
And I would really like to hear a lot of client voice for us to get it right and figure out, the things that, because I think that we have good ideas. We see other people standing up and we're really excited, but it does us no good if we do all this stuff and people don't want it, right? So, like, hopefully being able to build in a lot of consumer voice in whatever decisions that we make. That's what I would like to see, and be a part of a strategic plan process. So I think it's something that we need to press to get done as quickly as we can. But it costs money. So as well, if we want to get one. And so do we have the financial resources to pay for somebody who can get it done quickly? So, that's another question. I don't know if Jay was first or Wendy.
I think Wendy may have been.
Yes, thank you. I think first of all, it seems like from the questions in the chat that not everybody has seen the report and read it from the pre-shelter housing committee. So I don't know if there's a way to put a link to it in the chat so people can access it. But it's clear to me from the questions that not everyone has seen it. And I sit as, county commissioner. I'm also chair of the Durham Familiar Faces Initiative that is trying to help people who are really most intensively using our services and who are cycling in and out of our jail, our homeless shelters, on the street, and also emergency departments. So people with severe mental illness and substance use disorder. I'm also a new member of HSAC, and I'm on the housing task force. I serve in a lot of other roles that are, I think, connected to the population that we're trying to serve. I just want to say all this, the context. I also want to say that this request that we are talking about right now was something that was in response to a crisis that we are having right now in our community. This was presented to the Joint City County Committee back in the fall about the fact that we do not have enough people, enough space for families, for adults in our shelters. We have more people who are unhoused, people living in cars. At the same time, we heard a cry from our small business communities downtown about workers, customers being impacted by severe people with severe mental illness and substance use disorder on our streets in Durham. I am not hearing that in this conversation, and I want to make it clear. I respect the need for having a plan, and I totally agree. And I know that in a lot of the conversations that I'm in, is that the issues that we're facing in our community are going to be solved not just by government, but also by foundations and the private sector. And we're going to need to have a plan that involves everyone in our community. I think that's one of the highlights of this moment is that everyone wants to work together to help solve the problems that we're facing. So whatever plan we do is going to need to be involving everyone. And I agree, that's going to take time. That's why we have a responsibility to move quickly on these things. And this is separate from the budget that HSAC submitted, which is fantastic and will be part of the budget process. Elected officials in that meeting asked for recommendations about things that we can move quickly on. And that is the task of our community and of local government. Yes, we can put out RFPs. This report, which is very detailed, has already done a lot of groundwork and shows that people are willing to step up and help take action on a day center, trying a pilot on a day center, doing a pilot on pallet homes. And, we can move quickly on the flexible housing subsidy, the diversion dollars. We need to try to do as much as we can. And we can't be the ones standing in the way of serving people in our community. And, we have to remember that, perfection cannot be the enemy of just getting started on something. So I just want to say that, whatever everyone decides here, the elected officials are going to take up, your recommendations, but also what is in this report, because we know we're in a crisis and we want to take action, and we can do RFPs and we can direct staff to get going on this, because this is going to be local money, county and city dollars, plus we hope private sector money, the business community, and we don't have to worry about some of the regulations that we might have with HUD. So I'm just saying our community needs to step up right now to be helping people in our community.
So I'm glad I let Wendy go first, because I think I was going to say a lot of the same things. I was at the December 2nd meeting, and I think that was a very targeted conversation around the high needs population that is creating issues for the downtown business owners. And I got the impression from reading the memo that the result of the city county joint meeting was a request to us to propose how they could spend money in the near term to address that very particular issue. And I didn't really see anything in the memo other than, there was a separate pallet site for high needs individuals. And so I think if we go back to city council without addressing the high needs population, then we are not really fulfilling their request.
Thank you.
So, hello, everyone. I want to just say thank you for putting together the report. It's really detailed, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate you all sharing it so that we could have some context to the conversation that we were having before. A couple of things I wanted to point out regarding the pilot homes that were mentioned is that not every community breaks those down in 6 months. That's Greensboro, but there are many communities throughout the country that they are longstanding. So just wanted everybody to know that and to have some context. I agree again that we do need designated spaces, while also recognizing that, as Commissioner Jacobs stated, we're in the midst of a crisis, and we've been in this space for months, and we need expanded shelters. We need, yes, that day center, and also want to throw back out there like the tents, and recognizing that since both county and city are willing to step up and be part of this, that this is the time to strike. And we know that there are spaces of land throughout the city and county that could possibly be used to house folks, whether that's in tents, whether that's in pilot homes that, you know, only cost like, you know, I'm not gonna say only because it is money, but less than it would to build a shelter. But there are resources and there are means, and I want to just acknowledge that we can go and say, can we have this plot of land for this month or this next few months, to be able to allow folks to have a place to go and rest and be safe.
Jeanette.
Can I just really quickly throw in that I come from working at a sanctioned encampment, one of the longest running sanctioned encampments in the United States. I spent 5 years there. I know how quickly that site went up. I know that governments are different, and the way that things are run in each state and city and county are different. But you could have tents up, just initial starting out tents, and you know, if the city provides that land, very, very quickly, start with just basic porta potties, start with something very, very simple, and then build on that as it continues to grow, as more funding comes in. That's how you build something that's more sustaining and longer lasting. I think that with Chapel Hill recently having 2 unhoused neighbors pass away in the beginning of January, this is something that's very pressing, that we need to like really have our eyes open to the idea of expanding some sort of shelter so that we as a community in Durham don't experience that same loss.
Thank you, Jeanette. Abner.
Spoken, thank you.
I have lost a lot of sleep because I've been trying to figure out how to have this conversation, because at the end of the day, I am absolutely all for making sure that we take care of our unhoused neighbors, our people in the emergency shelter, and that their homelessness is brief. Like that is, you know, the most pressing and most important thing. Unfortunately, I haven't felt like a word was used about working together. And I can say that I don't I don't feel that. I feel like we have this tendency to do these siloed processes with various groups of people, and then we want to move forward. The deck feels stacked. I don't feel like I can like not say these things. So y'all just let me say what I'm feeling. I feel like there's a way that we can do things, and I don't think that it requires a group to go outside of HSAC in order to get that work done, because HSAC exists so that work can be done. I have sat on this HSAC committee for, oh my gosh, probably too long. And I have seen this same type of behavior happen over and over and over and over again. And then it feels like a tug of war, and it actually takes us off of the mission of what we're supposed to be doing. We've heard before that some organizations feel like they're shut out, they can't compete. I've been a part of wiping the tears of people who want to help in our community and get shut out. One of my biggest concerns is that the proposals that were done, kind of target specific organizations. And it doesn't feel good to me, because I think it closes off the competitive process. I think one of the things that we wanted to do for fiscal year 2026 was to make sure that the opportunities were open and fair and available for new players to come in and add to the beauty of our continuum. I'm struggling with this document. I feel like the things that we can do, the things that we can do quickly, are stopping people from coming in and figuring out a way to get people out. I absolutely agree that we need to have diversified shelter. But I also feel like there's a process and a policy and protocols and all of those things that come, because if we don't do that responsibly, we're gonna fail. And some people feel like we can just keep failing and keep trying, but I'm sick of burying my patients. I'm sick of temporary solutions. This is very frustrating to me to have to lead this group when I feel like it's just everybody's fighting for their peace and these people are dying. This is not how I would expect a community process to work. People shouldn't be left out of the opportunity to be at the table to bring things to light that maybe a group didn't think about when they were writing a proposal. I mean, and then it feels like at times there's no willingness to try to figure out, well, how do we get it right? And how do we get the consumer's voice in this, to know that even what we're doing, where we feel like in our heart is right, it might not be the right thing. It might not be the thing that the people need. And I just want us to do better. Maybe I'm just way too close to this and too passionate about it, but we need to do better than this. I'm losing sleep at night for the last 3 weeks. We gotta do better than this. I got patients in the hospital right now. When they get discharged, they're going outside. We gotta do better than this. It's a way that we can do it collaboratively. It is a way we can do it from silos, where everybody wanting to push their perspective or their initiative first. I just want us to get it right. Holland, I'm going to take a break. And Miss Colleen, I'm going to take a break. I need to walk away. And if you guys can handle some of this conversation while I get myself together, I would appreciate it.
Sure thing.
Okay.
I think, do you want to take it, Colleen?
Just needed to know if anyone else wanted to give comments at this time. I'm seeing Colin says he's going to find the ordinance as far as the building codes for Durham. That's in the chat.
Yeah, I'm looking them up. I posted what's in our UDO, and I was at a conference where Greensboro presented about their pallet homes, and the person who's in charge of it was very clear that it's a state ordinance or it's a national building. It's something that they locally could not deviate from. And yeah, every state's different. It's like, New York has, they're able to do things that we can't do because of the way our state is set up in terms of permissions from the state legislature. So I'm going to be working on that. And I see Tasha's hand is up. So,
been avoiding speaking. I'm getting over being sick. Can you all hear me? Okay, I'm sorry. I made folks in a meeting yesterday suffer through this, so I apologize. I missed policy and planning on Monday because, of course, I'm sick. It's the plan today to push for a recommendation for HSAC to vote on Wednesday. Is that the plan for the committee to vote on the recommendation to take to HSAC? You all can't hear me. I can
We can hear you.
You can't hear me.
we can hear you.
Okay.
We can hear. So I think the question is on the table, is there something that the Policy and Planning Committee would like to put forth to the Executive Committee as a recommendation for a specific dollar amount for a specific mid-year budget request to elected officials to try and find money before July 1st to stand up some or something or all of it before July 1st. So that's where we are, is just trying to say, okay, what is the urgent need? How much money is needed right now? And what could realistically be stood up before July 1? Because if you're standing stuff up after July 1, you're into the next fiscal year. I mean, obviously, if you get a mid-year budget allocation, now it does give you a jump start on being able to move it forward with some money. That's where we are now. It's just trying to figure out what dollar amounts for what intervention type needs to be put forth, or would the Policy and Planning Committee like to put forward to HSAC to recommend as going to the elected officials.
If anyone who is a member of that short-term excuse me, not short-term, the pre-housing shelter subcommittee wants to jump in, because I mostly observe and provide county context and things like that when I attend. But I just wanted to voice that my understanding, and I don't know if it's being communicated through this document in the way that I understood the intent behind the short-term recommendations. It was not to say that this is a sole source provision. It was to put forth kind of a menu of options and show that there were providers in the space that had thought about it and were willing to step up in various ways, but were also willing to go through a competitive process and be in conversation with leadership in whatever ways would be compliant with the existing processes that we as I'm in the government, that the government has to follow. And I, hearing the comments, I don't know if that maybe was communicated as it had been intended in this 40-page document. And I just wanted to note that, and then also note kind of a tension I'm feeling between, we have these proposals which are just kind of a menu of options that my understanding was to show that there was a willingness in the community, not to say this is the only provider that can do this. But it also feels like there's both asking for more specificity from these proposals, as well as a tension between maybe seeing the proposals and seeing that there is a provider doing them. And so, yeah, I just wanted to note it. I'm very open to a correction on that. It's, yeah, from anyone on this, in this meeting.
I do think it is important to also remember where we are right now on a national level. As we're debating these pieces, we have not heard anything definitively one way or another from HUD. The question comes down to, should the current administration choose not to award HUD funds? That there's nearly $3 million of permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing that was awarded from the 2024 COC application. And those awards were announced January 17th. And those contracts have not been executed from HUD to vendors. We have not heard from HUD directly whether they will or will not be instructed to execute those. However, we do know that items that have been on the HUD exchange related to LGBTQ or DEI have been removed. Contracts may look different, may get put on hold. We don't know what's going to happen. So we also need to keep that in the back of our minds, that there may be a $3 million gap that people in permanent supportive housing and currently in rapid rehousing projects, if HUD does not have those funds into contract, those projects could go away and require other resources to figure out, or we just have a higher number of unsheltered individuals when they lose housing because money runs out. And like I said, we don't know where it is. We're monitoring it. We are talking and trying to work on contingency planning for worst case scenarios, but we're living in uncertain times and a lot of chaos right now. So just where we are now compared to when the exigent needs started. Our exigent needs may look very different in 2 days, 2 hours, 2 weeks, or 2 months from now. And we need to be able to adjust and be flexible.
Colin, I have a question, if I
Please.
could. Sorry, I joined a bit late, but I wanted to ask Commissioner Jacobs in particular. You had mentioned that there was a source of resources in the community, from the business community, perhaps foundations and others. Based on Colin's recent statement, should there be an issue with federal funding, would those resources be able to meet both these immediate needs in this document, or the items that would be stood up quickly to address those issues that you brought up? Do you think it would be sufficient to cover this immediate gap and step into a potential expanded gap based on loss of federal funding?
Great question, Renee. So first of all, I think that the business community in particular is looking at how we're going to respond to this immediate crisis right now. And so when I say we, it's more at the level of elected officials and also city and county government. So again, going back to the immediate crisis that we're having on our downtown and our downtown businesses, that we, is part of why we asked for the pre-shelter committee for recommendations, is because if they don't see us take action and actually be effective, then we are actually not going to be able to build that kind of partnership that you're talking about. because that's what the business community and also foundations, conversations that I've had with foundations, they want to see what we're going to do. And some of them are willing to step in. I think some of the things that we've talked about, the flexible housing subsidies, diversion dollars, these are very quick, easy ways for the business community to immediately provide support. They want to be partners with us, but they want to see us be effective. Again, I want to encourage everyone, we have to build coalitions with everyone in our community, especially to your point, Colin, what we're facing. To get through the next 4 years, we have to be all working together, de-siloing. That's what this is all about. So I don't know, I mean, $3 million is a lot of money to come up with. We have to be realistic, but I think that's a separate, we do need to start scenario planning, and that needs to be done in partnership with everyone, all the nonprofits who are working in this space, everyone. That should be happening right now, scenario planning. And we're doing that within Durham City and County government as well. So yes, that's the only way we're going to get through this. But I just want to again say, after my 12 years of being in elected office, the private sector is always going to want to see us go first, and then they'll put skin in the game, right? And that goes to the strategic plan. I totally agree. We need a very large, broad strategic plan. And then again, other entities, they want to see that you have a plan. They want to understand where their investment is going in the process. So thanks for raising that.
The proposal has been shared in the chat for anyone that wants to look at it.
I'm curious if this group does recommend the proposal to the bigger group of HSAC. I assume there will be like more opportunities to continue fleshing this out and making sure that everybody knows what's going on and all the voices are heard. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I guess this is Colleen. My concern or is that we're making it seem as if the proposal is not going to go forward. The proposal will go forward. We were trying to determine what the additional funding request would be from HSAC. And our understanding is that it's going to be supportive of a portion of what is going to be presented through the proposal from the task force. And so we needed input from others regarding that. Freeman. You're muted if you're talking. Councilwoman Freeman.
Sorry, I was just checking in. I just wanted to make sure that I understood what was happening. The proposal that was made is moving forward.
The proposal from the, go ahead.
Sorry, that's what's trying to be determined because we're looking at what are the exigent needs. And the proposal has short-term, long-term, medium-term. It has a whole bunch of stuff in the proposal. And we're looking at what are the exigent must be done as a mid-year budget request. Because if we're looking at medium and long-term, some of those medium and long-term things may be part of a strategic plan that you may be, and the question comes, are we have the answers. If we have the answers, then why do we need a strategic plan if we're just going to follow through with the medium and long term? I think we need all of it. But it's sort of what needs to be done in the short term and how much money is needed before July 1st to stand up the exigent needs. And Sharita was sharing earlier, like the exigent needs that have come up consistently in policy and planning meetings is more diversion funds and more shelter beds. And then on the flip side is if you have shelter beds and you just take care of diversion and shelter beds, you don't have the subsidy and supportive services to move people out. So perhaps those are the three exigent needs. If that's the case, how much money is needed for each of those before July 1st when the FY26 budget and whatever happens with the FY26 budget request comes into play.
And thank you. And then just, I know there's a question, is there enough funding for both?
I do not know. I'm not the budget person for the city or the county, and I don't know what the budgets look like other than from my understanding of city and county budgets and elected officials, and anybody here who's in a higher pay grade than me, please correct me, is generally when those budgets are set for a year, the funding for the year is allocated. So a mid-year budget request would be looking at where is money not getting spent in a current year, taking it out of that budget line item and moving it to a new budget item. It's not necessarily like, or pulling it from a rainy day fund, I guess, is where a mid-year budget request would come from. And please correct me if I misstated that. I think Keith or Wendy or Deidreana, please correct me if I misspoke.
Yeah, well, Colin, I think, that's going to be up to each governing body. I mean, it's city and county may have different ways of doing it. We often have, every single meeting, actually, we're making budget amendments on the county level. So there's often funding that is not spent due to things like not filling positions. Sometimes we take money out of fund balance, but there's always the ability to make mid-year budget amendments. And again, I think that's how the process works, is that, HSAC would make some, if, whatever HSAC wants to input that they want to make on the pre-housing shelter work, which again, I just want to remind everyone, we're all in the same boat here. We are all working together. This is not about any of us personally. This is about the people in our community. We whatever we can and need to do to support. These are the most vulnerable people in our community. So I just really want to lift that up. That's the goal here, is just to take care of our most vulnerable residents. So we're all together in this, and we're all passionate about this, or else we wouldn't be in this meeting together. But because this is a crisis, it would come back to the governing bodies to review whatever input HSAC has, to review the proposals, and also our staff. I mean, we've got from the county, Samantha Smith here, Shannon Trapp, our chief of staff, they're going to make recommendations to us, and then we will, that's what it's all about. We'll have a public conversation, and then, yeah, we don't have unlimited resources. So we'll have to figure out, and with the help of our staff, what can we do right now? What funding is available? And then to Samantha's point, if we are going to do move forward with any of the pilots, those would have to be put out for an RFP. But this is the way government works, and we want to be responsive, and we're going to have to do a lot more of this over the next 4 years, to Renee's point. And we can do it. This is what Durham is about. We are about taking care of each other in our community, and this is how we are going to get through the next 4 years together.
I would just like to add, I think there have been a lot of support from non-government entities in the past, and I don't want to miss that support. I know I heard something about a study, but there have been a number of proposals that have been made to the city and the county, and I just want to make sure that those resurface if possible. And I also just want to make sure that we're not limiting the conversation to just a budget reality, like trying to focus on the fact that there are resources outside of the city and the county as well.
We've got about 25 minutes left in this meeting, and we need to get to the point that, is there going to be a recommendation of a dollar amount for a mid-year budget request to go forward to HSAC to discuss, approve? And if so, what would that dollar amount look like? And what exigent needs would be addressed before June 30th with that request? That's what we need to come up with in the next 20 minutes. Or other thoughts, ideas on how to move forward. But that's kind of where I think we are at this point. And what I'm hearing is we need to sort of move forward with a recommendation of sorts to HSAC to approve, to move something forward. So are there any recommendations on exigent needs that need funding before June 30th? If so, what are they, how much, and does anybody want to make a motion? And the motion would have to come from Policy and Planning Committee members. And the vote would be only Policy and Planning Committee members, because they're the ones who are the governing body.
Let me go and check quorum, because I don't know if we have enough people here to actually do that vote.
Okay, thank you.
It looks like we're one short for quorum.
Okay.
We
I
have
can-
Sharita, Colleen, Ebony, Samantha, Jay, and Abner, who can vote on how to proceed. I'll take that back. Drew is here too. So we do. We have Colleen, Sharita, but I'm not sure if Sharita's still on the call, or in this, participating in the meeting. I don't think she's here, but in that case, we would, if she's able to understand what the vote is and move it forward. So we have the 7 that's needed for quorum.
Okay. So we have enough to do a vote if needed.
Minus Sharita, she's not actually actively on the call.
All right, let me check in with her. We would have had quorum earlier, and once you hit quorum, I think you're at quorum for the entirety of the meeting.
Don't you have to have
If I recall
the
correctly.
number of votes?
Well, we'd need a majority of, if we had quorum, a majority of the people at quorum would win the vote. You don't have to have a unanimous decision of the quorum. So do any of the policy and planning members wish to make a motion to move forward with funding for exigent needs and define what that exigent need is and how much money would go to it? The exigent needs that policy and planning has heard for some time now is diversion money and shelter beds. Is there a motion to allocate some amount of money to those particular groups? If so, how much? I've heard, a need for up to $200,000 for diversion funds. And I've heard, the FY26 emergency shelter request is up to $1 million. There could be a proration of that $1 million for the amount of time left between today and June 30th, for instance, that would give something that would allow those funds to be extended with the next budget request, or in FY26, should those funds be awarded.
So Colin, this is Abner, and I'm going to make a motion to move forward with the proposal as is and sending it to the full body HSAC.
Which proposal as is?
The 40-page that we just read.
Okay.
Seconded.
I have a question, Colin.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Ebony. I was under the impression that we were only going to talk about the 40, when I made the suggestion in our executive meeting that we were bringing it to policy and planning because of the appendix. I don't have it before me. I'm with my mom, taking her to the doctor, as I mentioned before. I can't remember, but there were just a few, I think it was A, B, C, and F, or A, B, C, and E. I thought that was the conversation that we were going to be having today, not the full 40-page document. Can you please clarify that? I know I joined late.
Yes, you're correct on that, Ebony. Those were the items that were pulled from executive committee to be discussed today, as those were the short-term pieces.
Also, Colin,
Yes, ma'am.
just to make sure, just to be clear, these short-term recommendations that were stated, aren't they already the policy and planning recommendations?
Which short-term, the
The
short-term,
exigent needs that were mentioned, aren't they already the policy and planning recommendations?
I don't know the policy, hold on, the short-term recommendations that are part of the 40-page document.
That were mentioned in previous discussions. There was some synergy between the two.
Yes,
And
I think that's why hold on, I can't remember the letters off the top of my head. Those attachments from the 40-page document were the
And
ones.
if we make a motion, that motion has to be specific with what those A, B, C, D, and what those are, so everybody's on the same page about what they're voting for and the dollar amount.
Drew has his hand up, Claudia.
Go ahead, Drew.
I guess I just want to have a point of clarity that what I'm hearing is elected leaders asking for a bold vision for homeless services in Durham. And we're moving forth with, I haven't heard a clear dollar amount for either of these proposals. So this just seems like a moment that this body could say, we're endorsing to what Abena was proposing, this full recommendation, sending it to elected leaders, and then having it come back to HSAC for us to work out the details. And I'm just to be clear, like that's this group is we're only discussing. And I haven't heard a dollar amount either. So just, I guess, an observation and maybe just a point of clarity.
So I think, yes, Drew, that both are requested. The point of today's meeting was a continuation of last Monday's meeting to discuss the exigent need, because we had the plan, the HSAC already made a plan and a request for FY26, because that was requested by mid-January by elected officials. This meeting is to figure out what needs to be done before July 1st in terms of an exigent budget request to get through until June 30th, when the FY26 budget request would start. That was my understanding of what today's purpose was to get to what needs to be done today to meet the exigent need in the community that could be done and had to be done prior to June 30th and could realistically be done before June 30th.
So I'd like to propose that we move forward with the 25,000 per month for the diversion strategy.
Okay. So would you like to make a motion? And I guess we could do multiple motions if needed.
Yes, could we do multiple motions just so that we have clarity?
So on point of order, we do have a motion and a second on proposing of moving forward on the whole proposal.
That wasn't the charge.
That wasn't the charge. So I guess we need to technically, do we need a discussion or a vote on dealing with that motion and second first? And then if we want to go a different route, then I guess people would vote yay or nay on moving the whole proposal forward. Or then there's the discussion that we're having now and a possible other motion coming in for looking at specific needs that were brought up of 25,000 a month for diversion.
Colin, if I could for just a moment.
Please, Jeff.
We do have the HSAC chair online, and if she could level set so that we could know what we were authorized to be talking about, because the executive committee gave us a specific charge as to what to do. So I understand she doesn't have the paperwork with her, but if we could level set back to what she authorized us to do, what HSAC exec committee authorized us to do, and then look at how we stay within those boundaries, because we're really not authorized to go outside of them at this point.
Correct.
Yes, so again, sorry, I don't have anything before me. In our executive meeting that we had, I mentioned that we were going to utilize the appendix. And if someone, I'm not sure, Sharita, you or Keisha knows, someone took notes. Could you share what those appendix were that we were going to flush out in policy and planning during the special meeting?
Oh, one moment. I had it open.
Thank you.
Where is it? The appendix, Madam Chair, that we identified were Appendix B, labeled the strategic plan, Appendix C, labeled entry point diversion funds, Appendix D, flexible housing subsidies, and I want to say E, medical respite.
So Madam Chair,
That's it.
could you direct us on each one of those independently, in each one, so we can get a motion for those things exclusively?
Sharita, can you read them over
So-
again so I can just type them in the chat?
So the items that executive committee charged policy and planning to address in policy and planning were Appendix B, the strategic plan for fiscal year 26, entry point diversion funds, flexible housing subsidies, Appendix D, and medical respite, Appendix E. Does that sound correct, Madam Chair of HSAC? Ebony?
She is pulling double duty, but that is correct.
Okay.
Could you take each one separate, and can we do a motion on each one?
Okay.
So how much
So
money?
you're starting over
So
your
start with,
votes.
start with a motion of, so I think where we are now, given that the committee had a direction and we were jumping ahead of what was tasked by executive committee. It would be starting with the motion of whatever was in the first item that you listed, Sharita, dollar amount. in
Strategic
that?
plan, I don't see a dollar amount. It just says, prepare for fiscal year 26 strategic planning process through a presentation on dedicated housing fund used to support homeless strategies.
Okay.
And then the cost, it just says ensure enough funds are in place to support a city, county, and community-led strategic plan process in fiscal year 26.
Okay, so that would be the first motion. And then you would go to the second.
The second is entry point, direct funds to emergency travel diversion, arrears, and security.
Hold on, we need,
Oh, you want to vote
I
on
think-
each
I
one?
think
Okay, I'm sorry.
we need to make a motion to vote on each item, and then it'll be like, motion was made on this, and which ones those exigent needs need to go in. So does somebody want to make a motion related to that first item that Sharita brought up, related to the strategic plan and update on affordable housing? Is that what it was, Sharita?
I just read it verbatim from the chart. It does not have a dollar value attached to it in the chart.
Okay, so if there's no dollar of value associated with it. We're not asking for a mid-year budget request on that.
Okay, so
We're
then
asking
we
for a
can move
budget- if
forward
you're
to
asking
the
for a
next
budget
item.
request, that's what we need to focus on is where, if you need money, it's not saying that those items are not important because they are, and those are things that are being worked on. This is specifically about where we're looking for budget request items.
Okay, so, entry point, Appendix C, direct funds to emergency travel diversion arrears and security deposits. Total is 125,000, approximately 25,000 per month.
So is there a motion? This is diversion for up to for $25,000 per month. Is that what I heard you say?
Yes, that's what I
Okay.
said.
So is there a motion? Is
So
there a motion?
moved. Colleen again.
Thank you, Colleen. Is there a second?
This is Alvin, I'm seconding.
Okay.
The next one is flexible housing subsidies, Appendix D, and so it says secure 30% AMI units designated for homeless system through coordinated entry. It says, I don't know if this is an error. I'm looking in the chart. I see 700K. I don't know what that means. Does that mean what I think it means?
That's, read what was in that chart again?
So I'm looking at the strategies and context in the recommendations on the flexible housing subsidies.
Mm-hmm. So there was a $700,000 request in there?
Yes.
Okay. And Madam Chair, do you want to do a vote? Samantha asked a good question. Do you want to do a vote on each of these as we get a motion in a second, or do you want to vote on all the motions as one?
We probably should have went back and voted yes or no or abstain on, motion on the motion for diversion funds.
So do you want to vote? So do you want to do a vote on the so do a vote on your diversion of 25,000
per month.
which is I think 125,000.
Yes.
Okay.
Sally has her hand up. I think, can we restate the motion so that we're all clear? And we could get the adequate votes in the chat in reference to the motions that are being made, the actual vote count.
And Keisha, you're doing the actual vote count for us?
I'm trying to make sure that the people that are eligible to vote, because it's my understanding the policy and planning committee members are the only ones that can facilitate this vote. And I have no way of knowing that without counting their vote in the chat to make sure the proper person is actually voting on the item. And I feel like they need to be, in order for me to do that, each one needs to be separate so I can make sure the right person is actually voting.
Okay, I understand. So it has been properly motioned by Colleen and seconded by
Abena
to for a funding request of 25,000 per month, totaling 125,000 for diversion funds. All those in favor, put yes in the chat. Please put diversion, yes, no, or abstain has the same right.
And the people that can vote is Colleen, Sharita, Ebony, Samantha, Jay, Abena, and Drew, and Russ.
Is it possible for someone to record my vote verbally?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sorry.
And you have her vote, Keisha?
I'll put it in the chat for you, Ebony.
All right, so now the next item is appendix. Going back.
It looks like diversion passes. Is that correct?
Yes, the version passes. I'm sorry. The next item on the agenda is the flexible housing subsidies, Appendix D. $700,000 is the total amount that's recommended. I will entertain a motion.
And is that $700,000 for what period of, that's for between now and June 30th?
So it says $700,000 flexible housing subsidies and supportive services.
That
Isn't that for fiscal year 26?
That's the FY
not
26. So you would ask for,
Oh, so
we need to ask for a prorated amount of that for between now and June 30th.
Yes.
What would that be?
Can I ask a question? So when I'm looking at the flexible housing subsidies under Appendix D, the numeric amount that I see in the short-term recommendation is regarding case management. And I know Sally has also put a number into the chat, so I'm yeah, just wanting to note that. Sally, do you want to speak to the number that you had put in the chat for the flexible subsidies? Is Sally still on? Wait. Maybe she's not. Sally had stated 185,000 in the chat for housing subsidies. Maybe she is still on, but I'm not sure. So just wanted to note that.
That 700,000 does line up exactly with the total annual amount that was requested by HSAC for FY 26. So there could be a potential hiccup if that's 700,000. Anyway, go ahead and if you want.
I want to make sure that I'm clear on the dollar amount that this is supposed to be for.
So I'm going to propose make a motion for the 185 that Sally had suggested for housing subsidies.
And supportive services. It's a flexible voucher.
Yes.
Supportive
Yes.
services. So a motion for 185,000 for flexible housing and voucher and supportive services. Is there a second for that?
Yep, need a second.
Anybody want a second for flexible housing?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor, please vote yes in the chat.
Make sure you put flexible spending beside it. You also can abstain and no.
Flexible spending, yes, for Ebony.
Yeah, I'll type it in for you, Ebony.
Huh.
Looks like Jay didn't vote.
Jay, are you here?
It's okay, we can,
1, 2, 3. So 4.
you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 yes.
I am here. Sorry, I had to switch to my phone. I'll on the flexible spending, I'll abstain.
Okay. So it looks like the
I have
yays
2
have it.
abstentions and 2 abstentions and 1 no.
Mhm.
How many no's?
1 no and 3 abstentions.
And 3 yes.
I thought there were 4 yeses, Ebony, Abena, Colleen, and Sharita.
Okay, 4.
I'm just
Motion.
being, I'm being Ebony's typer since she doesn't have access to chat.
All right, I thought I saw hers. I counted it twice by accident or something. So, the next item I think is appendix. I'm sorry, I'm scrolling the document. Appendix E. Medical respite, $40,000. Expand case management and post-acute care services for entry point referrals.
I move that we request 40,000 for medical respite in the exigent requests.
I have a motion. I need a second.
This is Jay. I'll second that.
Thank you, Jay. It's been motioned and properly seconded. Please vote at this time. Yes, no, or abstain. Make sure you put medical respite.
This is Jay again on my phone. If someone can record me as a yes for this.
I can do that for you, Jay.
Thank you. And Colin, did you see my note?
Yeah, hold on a second. I think I saw it and got distracted. I apologize, Jay.
Yes, for Ebony.
I'll get you, Ebony. And give me a minute, Jay, and we'll get back to that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We missing the vote. This motion carries. 2 abstentions. 1 no. 5 yes. Those conclude the directives given to us by executive.
Jay had a question. I do want to go back and answer it. The question, are we limited to discussion of only items B, C, D, and E per direction of executive board? Or can he make a motion to recommend that city county begin site identifications for items F and G? I think that it's not a budget request, and I think it's something that we have already started some conversations of talking to planning and asking some questions to find out whether, what is the zoning ordinance, and having conversations with different departments to determine whether or not there's property that fits those zoning requirements that are available. So that's the update on that, Jay. I don't know if that helps.
I mean, I think I mentioned this in the policy and planning meeting on Monday. us not asking for some land to be identified is an irresponsible move on our part, and it's well overdue. And we should be asking for designated spaces for tenting and any pilots we seek to venture into, whether it be pallets or any other day center options or whatever in the future. So I think that we should absolutely request lot identification, and that doesn't have a value, but a monetary value at this time. But I think we would be remiss if we did not make that request.
And we have started on that, based on that conversation, we've started asking and looking into it.
We should have a draft of a tent policy on the 21st, and it would be very good for us to have some progress on that so that we can be working towards an identified place so that we can alert general services and the like. And our folks that we're serving that are tenting in the community on where they can go.
Yeah.
I don't, that was beyond the scope of the executive meeting, of the executive committee. Well, it was not something that was that was pointed out by executive to make that ask. That was something that we heard very loud and clear from our work around the tent distribution policy. So, Madam Chair of HSAC, are you in full support of us and Ms. Colleen and Reverend Vaughn, if you're here, on making such a request about identified space for tenting and any other initiatives we embark on?
I am, yes. To
Yes.
say sleep in those, yes.
Yes.
Alex?
Ebony, yes.
So is
Renee,
it fitting for me to
yes.
entertain a motion now for us to make that request?
You may do that.
Okay. I will entertain a motion that we make a request to city and county government for identified spaces for tenting and any other pilot projects we seek to utilize in our continuum to house people who are unsheltered.
Ebony, second.
Second.
So I think that was, so I made the motion, right?
Yes.
Can I make the motion?
Yes, you can make a motion.
Okay. And it was seconded by Abner and
Ebony.
Ebony. All members have the right to vote at this time. We have a motion and a second. Please put sanctioned encampment in your voting response.
Not Colin, this is Jay. If you can mark me as a yes on this, then I'm gonna have to drop off at this point.
You got it, Jay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jacobs has her hand up.
Yes, Commissioner Jacobs.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everyone that in the actual proposal, on the day center, it does mention in the plan details, possible locations, and also on page 6 of the proposal regarding the possible pilot sites for unsheltered families, all the different populations, site A, B, and C. There are also listed possible locations, but I just want to caution everyone that I know, just speaking as an elected official, for me, that discussion would need to be part of a plan. And so, these sites are part of certain proposals here. And I'm glad that you all are going to make some recommendations about moving forward on the pilots, because honestly, that's what was the heart of that was the heart of the request from the elected officials, was in response to our crisis for the need for expanded shelters for different types of populations.
Thank you, Commissioner Jacobs. The motion for that space carries. Commissioner Jacobs, you're aware that we're working on the tent distribution plan, right? Do you feel like, because I know that you are, your comment related to the other pilots, which I think are great pilots, was about like the space being a part of it. Do you see a space for tents to be in that discussion for now? And is that an okay move for us to make? Okay.
Yeah, I think I mean, personally for me, because as I mentioned, I'm part of the Familiar Faces Initiative, Stepping Up Initiative, and also our task force Sturm joins together. And again, there isn't a one size fits all for unhoused people in our community. And I think that's what this proposal recognizes. We're going to need different types of solutions for the different needs that we have for people. So I think that's also an important part of this. And we know that we need a place where some people need wraparound support, intensive case management in a site like a pallet site. That we don't have that in our community, and that's why, that's part of what we're hearing from people on the ground who are working with people, that's what's lacking. So I think it is important for HSAC, even if you don't want to recommend funding for any of those things now, that you all recognize the need for, further work on it or further study. I think that's important.
And we hear your concern, and if I can speak for the executive committee, anytime we've had a problem, we've been unable to support those endeavors that Drew and others have brought forth, that address our unsheltered neighbors. We have been very sad to have to do that. But the common denominator in all those instances was always space. And so I think us making a move forward to get some designated space opens up the door for us to not have a reason to say no to those things, because I believe that the merit of the executive leadership is that we need to be doing something, and we need to be doing a variety of things that meet the needs of people who are outside the walls of the shelter. Are we at the conclusion of our meeting?
Yes, ma'am. We're a little bit over time, actually.
Well, I thank you guys for your time, and I'm sorry about my outburst, but I get it needed to come out because I've been holding it. And I feel better going forward. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you for the work that you've done. And I believe if we can continue to work together, all of these things that we have identified as needed things will come to pass in our continuum in a expedient way. Thank you all and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Have a good one.